Governor Ali Ruba talking about the flooding that has taken place in Mandera. Let's now speak to the Chief of Staff of Mandera County, David Ohito, who's now joining us via way of phone. And thank you so much, Mr. Ohito, for talking to us here on KTN News Center. So the county of Mandera has been cut off. How bad is the situation as we speak?
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. I think we are on the brink of one of the biggest disasters since independence in this part of the country. There are two roads that lead to Mandera from the rest of Kenya that connect Mandera County to the rest of Kenya. One is via the Naba Moyale route and one is via Kutulo to Wajir. And both roads have been cut off. So there is no single truck or vehicle that can move from Mandera towards Nairobi via Wajir or towards Nairobi via Moyale. So literally the county of Mandera has been cut off from the rest of the country. There has not been a single bus that has crossed since October 3 when the rain started here. And if you look at the second biggest town in Mandera County, Elwak, half of the town is submerged. The road between Wajir and Mandera, as I said, has been cut off. And at the moment, there are over 143 vehicles which are stuck on the Wajir side with goods which were meant to supply into Mandera. So basically, Mandera has been cut off from food, medical supplies into the town, and nobody can leave either side of the seasonal rivers to cross and go to the rest of Kenya. And what the buses are doing, the commuter buses, is that they're carrying people up to these seasonal rivers, and then they use rafts or canoes or boats to cross to the other side of the river. The situation is bad. We're on the brink of a health crisis through waterborne and vector-borne diseases, and we fear that if there are no humanitarian services to intervene immediately, it will be bad. And secondly, it's been worsened by the long drought that was experienced just before the rains started. And remember, the counties had not received any money in July, August, September. And up to now, October, we've not received a single coin from the National Treasury because of the challenges that we had with division of revenue bill. But as it stands, the county resources have been overstretched by the drought that was experienced over 7 months. So it's really a bad situation, and there needs to be an urgent humanitarian intervention or we'll see mass deaths. We have over 100 houses swept away, and the situation is pretty bad.
You're requesting, the county government is requesting for humanitarian assistance. But even as you're waiting for that, what is the county government of, Mandera doing? Because, you're talking about Mandera being cut off from the other parts of the country. People are not receiving food. There's no transportation that's happening. So how are you ensuring that residents of Mandera have enough food supply and that when it comes to medical treatment, they're able to get the medical assistance that they need?
Yes, there's only little the country can do. Disaster management is a shared function between the county government and the national government. And as a county, we've been trying to do our best with the little resources available. We have been doing food supplies during the drought period, though we are badly overstretched. But the current situation is worsened by the fact that you cannot move in road and rescue. If there was a mother, for example, who is holed up in Wargadud and has complications, say, related to delivery, that mother, I'm sorry, it's very difficult to save her life because no vehicle can move in and rescue. You can only access by helicopter, and the county does not own a helicopter. This is why we are saying we need to move in the military, we need to move in humanitarian emergency services to rescue people, to rescue the sick. A total of about 10 dispensaries have been cut off. So the people in those local areas holed up cannot go to hospital because it's all submerged in water. That is the kind of situation we are dealing with. And there's very little, as I say, you can do when you can't move on road.
And Mr. Ohito, so how many families have been affected as we speak and, the number of deaths reported?
In Mandera, we've been fairly lucky. Only one death of a young child who drowned near Wargadud has been reported. But the situation is really dire. Over 100 households have been swept away, and we're seeing several people not less than 2,000 displaced from their living areas. The others are living in squalid conditions, and we fear outbreak of cholera and diarrhea and malaria also with these rains keeping raining, pounding the area.
And so, Mr. Ohito, then how are you going to handle waterborne diseases now that you're saying that some dispensaries have been closed?
Yes, we have ambulances which can reach the road. Where we can access people, we are doing evacuation and treatment of people.
All right, and Mr. Ohito, if you can still hear me, let's talk about the disaster management fund that's usually distributed to counties that have been affected by disaster, be it flooding or even drought. So, has the county government of Mandera, as we speak, received any sort of amount from the Disaster Management Authority?
I know there have been interventions during drought by the National Drought Management Authority, but they manage it's not sent to the central kitty of the town. But in terms of response to drought, I think the county did over 99% of the response with its own resources. So there's very little that has come, and up to now, in terms of rains and floods, we have had civil society organizations, some NGOs who have intervened, but there's a promise, of course, from the Ministry of Devolution that they will be supporting and.
Still hear me. Then finally, as we bring this conversation to an end, the weatherman, that is the Kenya Meteorological Department, had given county governments the weather data in terms of the rainfall. So what short-term plans did you have once you received this information from the weatherman's office, and perhaps the long-term measures that you put in place as the county government?
It's very interesting, yes. There's the weather data, but there's the reality on the ground. Vitu kwa ground ni tofauti. The weatherman might say it will rain from Monday to Friday, but it does not tell you how much floods it will be, how dangerous they will be, or how many roads will be swept away. So in terms of being prepared, yes, we have our facilities which are ready, our ambulances and emergency teams which are on the ground all over the county. But when it becomes this monstrous disaster like what we are feeling now, the floods, a whole town is submerged. No county or even all resources sent by government, you cannot dredge or remove water from half of a city. It's almost impossible. That's why we are saying we need more concerted efforts, more support from the military, more support from the national government and even emergency institutions. So,
Mr. Ohito, what is the short-term solution to this problem? Because as much as the county government is requesting for humanitarian support, from humanitarian organizations and from the government through the Ministry of Devolution, what short-term, plans do you have as you wait for help?
Number one on the list, we need food relief supplies to the people who are affected, the most vulnerable families that have been swept aside. We need food, we need oil, we need medicine for them. We also need medical personnel, and these guys can only move by air. So if we would have 2 or 3 choppers operating here, then we would evacuate the patients who are doing badly. We would deliver medicines and foods in the most affected areas. We do not have these resources, and we are overstretched, and that is why we are asking for support from possible institutions.
So as a county government, are you worried about the waterborne diseases, and what sort of medical, support have you put in place, or are you planning to give the affected families?
Yes, we have this, but as I've said, there are no roads to take them to these places. So how do you even deliver the supplies? That's why we are saying the Kenya Roads Board needs to move very fast, open up the roads, and find a way how we can move goods and services and even emergency crews to the affected areas. It's beyond our scope at the moment.
So when you're telling us that even the medicine that you have, you cannot supply, to the affected families because, the county has been, parts of the county has been submerged in water. So then how are you planning to ensure that this medicine reaches, the affected families?
What we're trying to do is we have emergency teams on ground. If you can move 1, 2 patients, people who are affected so much, to an area where an ambulance can evacuate, that is what you do first. That is the first line of rescue. And we have our referral hospitals and ambulance teams, emergency teams on the ground, responding full-time through ward administrators, club-county administrators. And that is how far we can go. But for now, we need a lot of aerial support, which we have not benefited from, and like other counties, like neighboring Marsabit. And that is why we are saying we need support like yesterday. People must come to the aid of the people of Mandera.
All right, so when you talk about losses, can you quantify, the loss that the county government has had when it comes to the number of cattle that has died, affected families, businesses have been closed?
There's been monstrous loss. Basic estimation by the Office of the Governor is at 2 billion shillings in terms of infrastructure, that is roads washed away, in terms of water supply systems and irrigation infrastructure washed away. At least 54 water supply networks across the county have been swept off, and the people in these areas have no other recourse until we repair and rehabilitate these water supply systems. There are about a dozen dispensary and health centers which cannot be accessed. There are schools which cannot be accessed. There are markets and sheds which have been swept up. There are over 100 houses which have been wiped away. Over 30,000 goats and sheep have been killed by floods, and we have about 100 heads of cows and camels also lost. So the loss is massive. It's huge. It's very devastating. And the worst part is that this comes after one of the worst droughts that ever visited the Mandera County.
All right. So, Mr. Ohito, you've painted for us a picture of how Mandera County looks like when it comes to flooding. Might you be having, information about your neighboring counties and probably how bad is the situation there?
Well, it's raining on the northern parts, but I am not competent enough to know what has happened in Marsabit. I only see on the media. I will not authoritatively say so, but I can confidently speak about Mandera that I have seen overflown the last 2 days with His Excellency the Governor, Ali Roba.
All right. Thank you so much, Chief of Staff of Mandera County, David Ohito, talking to us via way of phone, painting for us a picture when it comes to flooding that has affected that county. Families have been affected. That county stands at risk of waterborne diseases. They're now asking humanitarian organizations, including the government, through the Ministry of Devolution, to offer